Right, so today I want to talk about this story that Andy No links to, and he says a social media post has resurfaced from a Black Lives Matter Toronto co-founder, in which she argues that white people are subhuman and are recessive genetic defects. Now, again, um, this is just another blow against the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And again, like I've mentioned a million times, but I'll mention again, um, I am not anti quote unquote Black Lives Matter and the individual blacks uh, or pro racist. That what I'm anti is the whole movement of Black Lives Matter and the idea that they are clearly an identitarian group, in the way that they're more worried about the identity of the stuff that's involved rather than the actual values and what that. And I mean the other reason, I mean there's many other reasons. I mean just going down the list. I mean most of the top people are communists. They've had some that have even flat out admitted it. Um, they think that the police are the main cause and racism of the pain and suffering, when the reality is, again, like 10 unarmed black men were killed last year by police. So there's no possible way that you can argue that systemic racism within the police department is this big issue. Like, no, it isn't. It's not even close to a big issue. Again, those are just, and not to mention too, they completely ignore the fact that literal slavery. I mean, there's more blacks enslaved in other countries today than there is at any point in time in the state's history. Again, so if you're actually for Black Lives Matter, again, they had tens of millions of dollars donated to them. Why didn't they use that money to go free slaves that exist, that are literally enslaved today in Africa and the Middle East? Like, why didn't they free those people rather than giving money to the Democrats? Again, that's another reason why I'm against them. Is that the if you donate money to Black Lives Matter, a lot of that money ends up in the hands of Act Blue, which gives money to Democrats. Again, so they're a political identitarian movement that and this is the thing too that communists and these far leftists like to do, like Antifa, is that they like to manipulate people with language. Again, that which is always why they bring up the whole, if you're against Antifa, I mean let's go a step back. Antifa is short for anti-fascist. It's actually short for anti-fascist action, but um, the name is anti-fascist, and if you're against us, that must mean you're pro-fascist. And Black Lives Matter is Black Lives Matter, and if you have any questions about it, that must mean you don't think Black Lives Matter. Again, that's how these communists operate, is that they do stuff like that so that they don't actually have to entertain debate. That's why, again, why the left always accuses people of being racist, so they don't actually um, have debates with people and debate the merits of what their ideas and stuff. So again, it's there, like I say, those are the many reasons why I'm against them. And the other thing too is that if they get their way, then I mean the main reason why I'm against the whole movement as a whole is that if they get their way, the problem's only going to get worse. And what are they going to do when they recognize the problem when it got worse? Well, they're going to blame the same stuff they did. It's going to be, oh, white racism and racist police and systemic racism and all this garbage, when the problem only got worse, but and you guys got your way. Like, it's almost like because you guys are implementing stupid policies, the problem's getting worse. Again, and not to mention too, they'll blame white people as usual. So um, that's why I'm so against the movement. Is I'm simply trying to point out that if they implement their policies, then the problem is only going to get worse. And the other thing too is that a lot of the other policies they want to get implemented are by definition racist and completely and utterly unfair. Like, I mean, I look at a lot of these, especially the college people. I mean, there's the one. Um, Athlete, famous, it's been was in the news recently for doing something that I talked about. But their solutions to these problems, oh, we got to have more racial, more, you know, um, funds for blacks and more scholarships and more this and more quotas and more, like, again, if you don't believe in best man for the job or best person for the job, you are a racist and you're being disingenuous. I don't care if there's the underrepresentation. No, the underrepresentation exists because of differences in intelligence and differences in work ethic and all that kind of stuff. It has nothing to do with racism. Nothing to do with racism. Again, so anybody who wants more, you know, diversity quotas and more scholarships for blacks and all this garbage, again, they're more interested in identitarianism than they are in actually fixing the problem. And the other reason that really bothers me is that it hurts people who genuinely um, deserve that spot, because again, there's so many people that can get these jobs and can get these degrees. I mean, you could increase the number, but then that just dilutes the value of it. So again, if you give a degree to an underqualified black person, you're taking it away from a qualified white or Asian or Jew, again, which is in and of itself racist. And if you actually were against racism, then you would be for best person for the job. You would be for best person to, again, if you actually believed in a anti-racist um, college admissions, system, then what you would believe in is that everybody who applies is simply assigned a number, and the grades are attached to the number, and an algorithm simply picks the best people, which would be as unprejudiced as you can possibly create a system. Now, why is the left so against a system like that? Is that blacks would be underrepresented, not because of racism, but because of a lower average intelligence. And I mean, just flat out less blacks wanting to go to college. Um, Again, so that, I mean, that's the other thing too, is that the leftist theory goes as is that all differences in outcome are a result of bigotry or prejudice or racism or whatever you want to call it. And the problem is that a system like that would completely fly in the face of their worldview, which is exactly, again, the left is the most. And again, Martin Luther King, I mean, the guy had his issues and he wasn't the best guy in a lot of ways, but the one thing he was right about is that people should be judged based on the content of their character, not the color of their skin, which would exactly be the people with the best grades get into college regardless of race. And again, if Black Lives Matter, like I say, and getting back to the whole Black Lives Matter thing, is that if they actually cared about Black Lives Matter, or if they actually cared about Black lives, they would spend little to no time worried about police and systemic racism and all this garbage. They would spend almost all of their time, number one, pointing out the fact that slavery exists in Africa and the Middle East, to a much larger degree than it ever existed in the States. Again, there's millions of people enslaved nowadays. I think the States, what did they? I think that the numbers show they peaked around 400,000 slaves. So again, there's far more people enslaved nowadays than were ever enslaved in the States. Um, so again, if they actually cared about Black lives, they would be more worried about those Black lives. But again, not a peep from that. So again, that's just strike one. And again, if they actually cared about Black lives, they would be up in arms against the welfare state, because the welfare state just enables most of the pain and suffering that the Black community faces. Which again, they not a peep from that. So again, that's strike two. And strike three would be, again, that Blacks are 50 times more likely to kill other Blacks than whites are. Blacks are, even though blacks are a much lower, I think they're like 3 or 4 times lower percent of the population. Blacks are more likely, not even per capita, just straight up, more likely to kill a white person than like, yeah, like, in other words, they're probably 3 or 4 times more likely to kill a white than the other way around. So again, if blacks were actually worried about Black Lives Matter, then they would be looking themselves in the mirror and be like, hey, we kill ourselves way more. I mean, per capita, like I say, blacks are 50 times more likely to kill a black than a white person is. Again, so if they actually care about more racism and more Black Lives Matter, then the entire goal would be to, okay, how do we stop killing each other? Again, it's not a secret. And again, this stuff's been around for a decade. Like, I remember one of the most famous, or one of the most viral tweets after Ferguson was, "If Black Lives Matter," I don't remember who did it, but it was, who if Black Lives Matter, then stop killing each other. I think it was a famous rapper or actor who was black. I don't remember which one. I mean, there's not very many that are conservative, so it can probably narrow the list down quite a bit. But again, it was, if Black Lives Matter, then stop killing each other. Again, this is the problem too, and that Again, that's why you know that it has nothing to do with stopping racism. Black Lives Matter is exclusively an identitarian far left group. That is exclusively why they exist, to push these far left ideas. So, anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last few things, check me out on Parler, BitChute, and Twitter. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there. Very important that you follow people that are out there speaking the truth. So check out those links.